Hey everybody.
Hey,
I'm Xavier Jackson,
I'm Alani Kaysen.
and our focus article that we had to kind of dissect is the role of emotional labels in early childhood learning.
So basically, the study that we read about examined how 3-year-old children match facial expressions to emotional vignettes, exploring the role of emotion labels in this learning. Children were exposed to either explicit emotion labels, novel labels, or irrelevant information, followed by a post test to assess their learning. Participants were diverse, with most children having a parent with a college degree, and the study aimed to clarify how different types of labels impact emotion learning in young children.
So a quick intro. This topic matters because emotional recognition, is critical for social development in children, as like you see. Language plays a pivotal role in helping children categorize and interpret emotions. Also, and the purpose of the study is to examine, like she said, whether the different types of emotion labels, explicit, novel, irrelevant, or just no labels at all, improve or like regress children's ability to recognize and learn emotion.
Prior research, the role of labels in learning, labels help children to categorize objects and concepts. So, as they're learning how to pick what is what and determine, like, this is a ball, this is a dog, that helps them categorize, like, what is an animal, what is a food, what is a color, things like that, which adds to their emotional growth in their learning as they continue to develop. It also enhances their memory recall through association and repetition. So with young children, you often see them, they do flashcards. A is for apple, B is for ball, etc., etc. And that basically that repetitiveness helps them associate things with certain objects and concepts, which helps further their development. As far as explicit and versus novel labels, explicit labels provide clear, familiar connections. So, like I said, this is a dog. Novel labels like FORP engage attention and curiosity, promoting deeper processing. And you can kind of see those differences in different methods of teaching kids how to sort things or how to categorize things as they're learning. Studies on labeling effects, previous research shows that labeled objects are learned faster than unlabeled ones. So the flashcards, the showing them the object and telling them what it is, they learn that and they'll recognize and remember that regularly versus just letting them play with something or letting them have something and not giving it a label because they won't understand what it is. And novel stimuli improves engagement and memory, but may demand higher cognitive effort. So that process and their brains are working to determine what you're showing them for them to remember what it is that you're showing them. Is their brain constantly developing and constantly working? And that's that higher cognitive effort that they're talking.
These are our research methods. The hypothesis was that children exposed to explicit or novel emotion levels would perform better in recognizing and learning emotional expressions compared to irrelevant or no label exposure. The first objective was to assess how label types impact recognition and emotional expressions. The second was to investigate mechanisms connecting verbal labels and emotional categorization. And the third was to highlight the developmental implications of language on emotional learning. And the independent variable this was the type of label, like we said, the four different ones. And then the dependent variables were the recognition accuracy and learning outcome.
So the methods of the procedure, it started with a pretest. So the children completed trials to assess their baseline ability to identify emotions from facial expressions. Number two was the learning phase. The participants were then exposed to 24 vignettes, six per emotion, and the vignettes included neutral drawings and facial expressions paired with emotion labels. For the post test, children completed similar trials to measure their ability to identify target emotions, and improvement from the pretest was then analyzed. The tools that they used were standardized emotional face images, so think a smiley face, straight face, frowning face, and controlled vocabulary for each condition. So happy, sad, angry versus, excited or uh, frustrated, things like that.
So the participants consisted of 72 kids between 3 and 4, and they were recruited from preschools and community programs, with half of them being, well, 42 of them being female, and there's it in like word form. There are four conditions that the kids were invited into, and random assignment for each condition.
For participant validation, the emotion stimuli validated with adult raters achieving higher agreement. 84.4% for faces, 90.2% for vignettes, and agreement well above chance for all categories. So disgusted, 93.6%, I think this says, and for faces, and 100% for vignettes. The materials for the stimulus, there are four target emotions: afraid, angry, annoyed, disgusted. Visual stimuli, facial expressions from 11 undergraduate women. Vignettes, 24 scenarios, six per emotion, paired with neutral drawings. These are just some examples from the test, and you can see that some of the scenarios. So it says that Evelyn is playing soccer. She told her team that she wanted to be the goalie today, but someone else took the spot first. Evelyn stomped away to talk to her coach. So the student would have to match the description of the emotion, the label for the emotion with the picture. And you can see the different faces that she's making in the picture. For the second one, it says Zoe is going camping with her family. She has never done this before. She will be sleeping in a tent outside and doesn't like that it is very dark. So again, the child will be matching a label to the emotion that's being depicted in the picture. And it's, again, testing their ability to recognize these emotions, label them, and continuously do so for the test.
He's These are the results. The key findings were that children in the explicit and novel label groups significantly outperformed those in the relevant and no label groups in emotional recognition tests. And you can see that in the chart below. Novel labels were as effective as explicit ones, suggesting flexibility in learning. And here's the quantitative data. The explicit had 85% recognition accuracy, while the novel had 82%. Irrelevant had 52, and then no labels had 47.
Back again with the results, post HOC T test, explicit label versus irrelevant information. You can just see the data here for explicit label versus novel label versus irrelevant information, which goes back to the chart that you saw on the previous page, which is breaking down the test results for each of the students. Like we said before, the explicit label condition significantly outperformed the irrelevant information condition. Explicit showed better performance in the novel label and irrelevant did not significantly differ. So you can kind of see the differences between the different tests, and the mean difference scores are listed below. So for explicit label, the mean was about 0.96, for novel 0.08, and irrelevant was a negative 0.38.
Here's the kind of statistical analysis. The one-way ANOVA reveals significant differences among the four conditions, and you can see that through the equation right there. The post-HOC Tukey test confirmed that explicit and novel label groups outperformed the irrelevant group, and that there was no significant difference between explicit and novel groups. And then the secondary results, or the learning rate, was that learning improved. Explicit group improved 25% from the training phase to the testing phase. And then the novel group improved by 23%, while the relevant group only showed about 7% improvement. The effect size of the effect of the label type on recognition accuracy was large. The equation is n squared equals 0.56.
So for the discussion, the interpretation of the results. Basically, the verbal labels act as cognitive tools to help the children connect emotions with facial expressions, and the similarity and effectiveness between explicit and novel labels indicates that children can adapt to unfamiliar linguistic inputs. If you think in a practical sense or in the real world, like the flashcard example that I gave, if you're observing children learning the terms and learning the words, even if it's not related to emotions, but just learning how to label objects, you can watch them learn how to label something or learn how to identify something. And that's that unfamiliar linguistic input. So, like, if they're learning a new word, they're also learning how to categorize at the same time as that. As far as implications, caregivers and educators can use verbal cues to enhance emotional understanding. Introducing new emotional terms might expand children's emotional vocabularies. So, this is going back to happy and sad versus excited, or terrified, or scared, and just bringing in different words that are conveying similar emotions, but it's increasing and expanding their vocabulary. Limitations: the study had a small sample size and limited diversity in participant backgrounds. The study only focused on facial expressions, not other emotional cues. So we know at our age in our everyday that you can gauge emotions based on body language and tone of voice and different things like that. But this study only focused on facial expressions. So that's kind of a limitation. But throughout the years and throughout their development, children can learn to pick up on other cues, other emotional cues that were not tested in this study.
Discussion part two. The study goal was to test if explicit, novel, or relevant help children link facial expressions to emotional stories. The key findings were that the explicit labels improved learning significantly from the pre to post test. The novel labels had no significant impact, and the performance was similar to the irrelevant information, which was slightly negative, I meant, suggesting a distraction. And the implications of this are that labels aid emotional category learning, especially familiar labels. Real world experiences with emotion words are crucial for abstract emotional understanding. And for future research, examine in person learning, multimodal emotion cues, and specific emotions are all things that are being worked on and are to come.
These are just citations for the article and the reading that we did. And we can pause here to talk a little bit more about the social and cognitive development. So, and how the emotion words are aiding in that development. So, by learning to categorize and name the emotions, the children are better equipped to manage their own feelings and understand social cues around them. So, as they begin to interact with other children their age, they're going to school, they're going to the park, they're out and about in the community, learning how to identify these emotions and label these emotions help them with their social interactions, which in turn helps them with their social development, which helps with their cognitive development. And that's why they say that socialization for children is so important, because the more they interact, the more that they learn. Also, the impact of emotional vocabulary on their emotional skills. So the research shows that children with richer emotion vocabularies tend to have better emotional regulation. So if they know what happy looks like, if they know what sad looks like, they know what angry looks like, they can identify that for themselves, and it can help them learn to work to deal with their own emotions.
And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, period. Um, Questions. I think they said they're going to post a discussion board for you guys to ask any questions, and we're here to answer them.